They still talk about it in Oakridge, but they do so quietly, in the checkout line at the grocery store, over coffee at the diner, in hushed tones that suggest a ghost isn't just in the past, but in the machinery of the present. The official record calls it the Mercer case, a tragedy, a cold case, but for 20 years it's been a quiet, persistent tremor beneath the town's foundations, all because of the night a 10-year-old boy vanished, and how the truth never really came home. His name was Eli Mercer. December 3rd, 2003. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but the one his parents hold most dear is a simple one. Eli, with a gap-toothed grin, clutching the family dog, a scruffy terrier named Bandit. It was cold that evening, cold enough that your breath hung like smoke in the porch light. Laura Mercer called him in for dinner. Just a few more minutes, he'd pleaded, just to tire Bandit out. That was the last time she saw her son alive, chasing a dog toward the old pasture at the edge of town, a place he'd been 100 times before. When Bandit returned alone, whining at the door, the first flicker of fear ignited. By midnight, it was ablaze. Flashlights cut beams through the skeletal winter woods. Neighbors, police, church folks, a community united in dread. And at dawn they found him, not lost, not hiding, face up in a shallow, frozen puddle at the edge of that field. One small sneaker missing, his body positioned deliberately, and on his chest, placed with chilling care, was a single smooth river stone. The coroner's report was a puzzle of contradictions. The cause of death was head trauma, but the grim truth was the wound came asterisk after asterisk. He died. And then there was the blood work. Tiny, almost undetectable traces of a livestock tranquilizer xylosine. Someone had rendered Eli unconscious. They had taken him. And then, after he was gone, they brought him back to that field. They arranged his body. They placed that stone. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a panicked crime. It was a scene, staged. But for whom and why? The town called it evil. The police, overwhelmed and out of their depth, called it unsolved. And by the following spring, with no viable suspects, the case file was quietly closed. But for Eli's parents, David and Laura, the silence was deafening. David and Laura Mercer refused to let the world forget Eli. They kept his room a shrine to a life interrupted. A baseball glove on the desk, a half-finished model rocket on the shelf. Every December, they lit a candle in the window, a beacon against the forgetting. They became amateur detectives, their grief fueling a relentless pursuit of justice. They compiled binders thick, heavy things filled with every clipping, every police report, every whispered rumor. They mailed these binders to the state crime lab, year after year, their pleas becoming a ritual of hope and despair. Years turned into a decade. The pastor grew wild, swallowing the memory of that night. People moved away. The world moved on. But the Mercers stayed, waiting, a monument to a question that had no answer. Then, 20 years later, a local reporter named Janet Rowe, digging for a retrospective piece, found a ghost in the archives. Not a specter of a person, but of a decision. An internal memo buried deep, recommending the case be closed due to lack of evidence and jurisdictional priorities. It carried one signature, Raymond Holt. Back in 2003, Raymond Holt was a young, ambitious assistant district attorney. He was the one who signed the death warrant for the investigation, the same Raymond Holt who now sat in the governor's office. When Rose's story hit the front page, Oakridge didn't just remember, it erupted. Why had the case been buried? Was it incompetence, or was it something far more calculated? Why was the governor's signature on the last page of a child's murder report? The cameras descended on the state capitol, and within days, Governor Holt appeared somber, statesmanlike. He announced a $25,000 reward for new information and vowed to reopen the investigation with the full weight of his office. To the world, it looked like a leader righting a past wrong. But his advisors whispered a different story to the press. He needed a sympathy boost before a tough election season. It was damage control. As the new investigation began, old whispers found a megaphone. The tranquilizer, xylazine, was traced back to a specific local farm, Crestview Agri-Supply, which had once supplied the Mercer family's feed. The owner, a man named Carl Jepson, was a known figure in local politics. And he was also, coincidentally, one of the first and most generous donors to a young Raymond Holt's campaign for district attorney. Jepson had sold his farm and left town abruptly, just months after Eli's funeral. Coincidence, the governor's office said, but coincidences, when lined up, form a pattern. And patterns, they tell a story. Neighbors, emboldened by the new spotlight, came forward. Some remembered a white pickup, similar to Jepson's, idling near the fence line that night. Others, their memories sharpened by time, swore they saw a man carrying a burlap sack through the fog-shrouded fields. None of it was concrete proof. But together the fragments began to form a shadow that seemed to lead right to the governor's doorstep. Through it all, Eli Mercer became the story's unwavering conscience. Her face, lined with 2 decades of grief, was on every news channel. "I don't want revenge," she'd say, her voice steady but her eyes holding an ocean of pain. "I just want the truth. I want to know what happened to my boy." Some nights, she would walk to the edge of that same field, the wild grass brushing against her legs. She'd set down a candle, light it, and wait until the flame consumed itself, dying into the dark. 2 decades, no arrest, no conviction, only rumors, ghosts, and a governor who may have been trying to bury the past to protect his future. And so the central, haunting question remains, as cold as the December air in Oakridge. Who placed that stone on Eli Mercer's chest? A final, cryptic message? A token? A signature? And why did they need the world to see him that way? Maybe the answer isn't lost in that field. Maybe it never was. Maybe the truth was always known, just hidden, buried not by time, but by those who couldn't afford to have it found. And it waits there still for someone to finally listen. If this story unsettled you, subscribe for more dark mysteries where truth and time never agree. Subscribe for echoes of evidence. Because every betrayed trust tells 2 stories, one you see, one you don't.